Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies, and of course the in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. Today is Wednesday, April the 8th, 2020. Today we're starting with a quick explanation and a thank you. While watching these reports, you may sometimes see a thank you pop up on the screen. These thank yous are to the people who have sent me links to stories. Obviously, it's only right that I show some recognition of that fact. I also want to point out that if you have sent me a link but do not see a thank you, that's simply due to the fact that I have already found the story prior to you sending the link. I am of course extremely grateful to all of you who send links to stories that you may think are relevant to the channel, as I am generally alone in this channel's endeavours and it can be hard to find every story based on the time frame I have to work with for each daily report. However, I never take credit for a story if it has been sent to me before I found it myself. But I wanted to explain why some of you may not see a specific thank you if you've sent me a link. But I also wanted to thank each and every one of you who do send me links, whether I have already seen them or not, as it helps enormously. Okay, now cracking on with today's reports. 71-year-old married father Daryl Waters has been spared prison after a Liverpool Crown Court judge called him a good husband and a constructive member of the local community, after appearing before him on charges relating to being caught with more than 50,000 indecent images and videos of children as young as 8 years old. Waters confessed to police that he viewed the images of child sex abuse victims on a daily basis for the past decade after Cheshire Police received intelligence that indecent images were being made available over the internet from Walters' Warrington home in 2018. When police raided Walters' home, they seized a mobile phone, laptop and hard drives, along with arresting Walters, who was present at the time. Paul Blasbury, prosecuting, said that the equipment was analysed by police experts who found a total of 51,189 indecent pictures and videos. He said most of them showed young girls aged between 8 and 12 years old. Walters, who has no previous convictions, admitted 1 count of possessing and 3 counts of downloading indecent images of children. Not sure how you can have over 50,000 images and videos and only 3 counts of downloading though. Walters of Meeting Lane, Penketh, claimed he started looking at the images as a distraction from his personal problems, including his son being a heroin addict. Martin Pizzi, defending, described his client as being embarrassed, ashamed and remorseful, for being caught no doubt, and urged the judge to follow the recommended pre-sentence report by sparing him jail. Judge Neil Flewitt QC said, "If you didn't realise it at the time, I hope you realise it now, that each of these young girls you were looking at on your computer screen was a child that was being sexually abused." Really? No shit, Judge. Children like that are sexually abused in huge numbers because there is a market among people like you who view these images. You put it out of your mind at the time, but that is why this is such a serious collection of offences. At which point, seeing as the judge can see just how serious this is, the judge said, "You are a man of previous good character. You have lived a good life and you have always worked hard and been a good husband and a constructive member of the local community. It seems to me, in all the circumstances, that it is not necessary for me to send you immediately to prison." And so Judge Neil Flewitt QC, knowing full well and saying as much that this was a serious offence, decided to give Daryl Waters an 18-month community order with a rehabilitation activity requirement of up to 20 days. Because 20 days rehab is clearly going to help somebody with a decade-long track record. He was also fined £500 and ordered to pay £300 towards the prosecution costs before the end of May, or face 14 months in prison in default. The judge told Waters to sign on the sex offenders register for 5 years and to comply with a sexual harm prevention order for the same period. Unbelievable. Have you ever noticed how the police tend to blame other factors for their behaviour or misdeeds, never openly admitting when they are wrong? Me too. And times haven't changed, as it's being reported that police are blaming the government for their harsh treatment of the public during the lockdown. Of course, because Boris has his hands up your arse and using you as a glove puppet. Simon Kempton from the Police Federation said that normally officers would be trained before new legislation came into force, but lockdown powers under the Health Protection Coronavirus Regulations and the Coronavirus Act were brought in so quickly that this was not possible. But does that really prevent police from using common sense? Oh, right, they don't have any. Simon Kempton said, "We had a period of time, several days, where actually our only briefing was the very clear, very stark guidance that ministers and other government officials were giving to the public. We didn't at that time have anything in writing, and that might have led to some of the inconsistencies in approach." British Transport Police was one force that had to pull back after incorrectly fining Marie Dinou £660 for apparently attempting to take an unnecessary train journey in Newcastle. Cheshire Police have also admitted that the action to summons 5 people for being out for a drive due to boredom, returning home from parties, as well as multiple people from the same household going to the shops for non-essential items, was incorrect. Well, when we see such things as this, do you wonder why? Mr. Kempton said that the police's relationship with the public should not be sacrificed amid the outbreak. He said, "At the minute we're in the middle of this pandemic and it's scary and it's unprecedented, but it's going to end. And when it ends, the public are going to emerge and it's going to be a very different world. They will have lost their jobs and businesses and they're going to need protecting by the police at that point." It's going to be a very different world, all right, and if something isn't done about it now, it will be a complete totalitarian police state that we're already seeing this happen with the abuse of powers, and they've only had them for a few weeks. We can best protect them not just by having the right equipment, but by maintaining that relationship. "I'm really proud of the relationship that we've got with the public," he says.
So when we spoke earlier, I'd said I'd ask you why you're out. You said you were exercising mentally.
I am, yes.
Okay. I said, well, I don't think that's in the spirit of what's happening.
Well, I'm in the spirit of social distancing. I'm sat here on my own. I'm not infecting anyone.
You don't.
I don't mind.
Madam,
Look, you're allowed to take me to the station if you want to. You're going to have to.
All right, well, that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. So could you come in the van?
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
What are you approaching my car for, bud?
What? Oh, because you've been involved in an incident.
What's that?
There's apparently been some issue between you and a traffic warden, sir.
Oh, I've just been recording him saying that he's out on quarantine. Is he a key worker? Why should he give me 5 tickets in a week when no one's allowed to work or leave their houses? Another one round the corner as well. Come into my door because I recorded. Oh, look, there's another one.
Yep.
What? You're all at my door in front of my neighbours because I recorded a traffic warden saying, "Why are you out on quarantine?" Not even 2 metres away from each other either. Why are you out on quarantine when it's a government thing? Why are they out putting tickets on people's cars? And now you've got 5 police officers intimidating my whole family because why are you pulling that face as well?
This gent here has stopped me. Now, I presume that he was going to warn me that there's something happened further up the road, but he's feel free to interrogate me as to what I'm doing, where I am, my driving, and I don't understand why. Could I have your name?
4597 production number.
Thank you very much.
Give me your driver license, please.
Am I being detained, yes or no? Am I being detained, yes or no? Don't touch my vehicle.
Right.
And why are you touching my vehicle? What in God's name are you doing? Now I'll ask you one more time before I leave. Am I being
I'm asking
detained?
for your details of your car.
Get off of my, get off.
Don't start with the
Get,
accent, fella.
you've just tried to grab, you've just snapped my fucking key.
Right, I'm asking for
Look
your
at
details.
that.
Paul Griffiths from the Police Superintendents Association said that initially officers were guided by policy intent rather than the new law. He told the committee that the legislation has been introduced at a pace and a scale that we have never experienced before. Well, Paul, maybe you should have just taken a few days to look at how best to implement it while ensuring that your constables understood reasonableness and common sense practice. After all, the police not always bleating on about how you have to make quick decisions and that decision making and common sense approaches are something that you look for in police recruits? Well, now We've all heard of Marie Dinou. In fact, I've just mentioned her, who was called the first person to be fined under the Coronavirus Act, before thankfully the story was picked up by Kirsty Brimlow QC, who called the prosecution a mess, as she was prosecuted under the Coronavirus Act Schedule 21, although she committed no offence under that act. Well, Sad But Mad Lad sent me a very interesting link to an article discussing this incident, which I'm pretty sure most people won't even know about, as it's not a news outlet, but rather what seems to be a personal blog by a legal professional. Now, I've already said keeping quiet is the best option in these circumstances, as the burden is on the police to prove you are breaching regulations laid out in new legislations. But what I was not aware of until I read this article is exactly how bad the judicial system is behaving, and how being quiet and saying nothing is more to your advantage than I initially thought. For example, the article states that there is now what is known as a single justice procedure, under which certain minor cases can lawfully be tried in the defendant's absence if they fail to enter a plea. The fairness of the procedure is pretty dubious at the best of times, as Penelope Gibbs, amongst others, has been saying, largely in vain, for some time, but, fair or not, it is certainly not available unless a defendant has been served with the appropriate papers and given 21 days to respond, and that certainly didn't happen here. Which means that while people are being taken to court within days of their supposed offence, the courts are not making available the 21-day period to respond as laid out in the single justice procedure, which is laid out in the Criminal Procedures Rules, Part 24.9. Which states it can only be used not more than 21 days after service of the defendant of the documents listed in paragraph 1, which are a written charge, the summary of the evidence on which the prosecution case is based, details of any previous convictions of the defendant which the prosecutor considers relevant, other than any conviction listed in the defendant's driving record. If applicable, a notice that the defendant's driving record will be made available to the court, a notice containing or describing any other information about the defendant relevant to sentence which will be made available to the court, a notice that the procedures set out in this rule applies, a notice for the defendant's use if the defendant wants to plead guilty, a notice for the defendant's use if the defendant wants to plead guilty but wants the case dealt with at a hearing by a court comprising more than one justice, and a notice for the defendant's use if the defendant wants to plead not guilty, which were not given in Marie Dinou's case. Now, the author of this article goes on to say that it is concerning, to put it politely, that the judge thought she could entirely ignore so many principles of natural justice in a criminal case. One could put it less politely, to dignify this farrago as a kangaroo court would be unfair to marsupial jurisprudence. District judges are legally qualified. The competition to become one is considerable. One justification for employing them, apart from the undeniable fact that they tend to get through their cases quicker, is that they are less likely than unqualified magistrates to get the law wrong. He also goes on to say that she failed to spot that the charge sheet disclosed no offence known to law. Worse still, the procedure she adopted in court appears to have been grotesquely unfair. She had no way of knowing whether Ms Dinou was fit to plead if she understood the charge, which is unlikely since neither the judge herself nor any of the other participants did, or if she had any defence to it. The case could easily have been adjourned to allow a little more time. It is highly unusual for any contested case to be heard in its entirety on its first appearance in court, and by declining to enter a plea, Ms Dinou ensured that the case was contested. The judge's decision to rush the trial to this disastrous conclusion is very hard to understand. One can only hope that she has now learnt her lesson. The judge, not Ms Dinou. It's an incredibly interesting read and certainly will leave you with more knowledge and a better understanding of how you can help yourself in a similar situation. And I urge you to go and read it fully for yourself. As always, links to everything I discuss are put into the description as evidence of my sources of information. And I want to leave this report with a final thought. This is again from the Barrister Blogger blog and says, one shudders to think of how many other acts of petty sessional injustices have passed and will pass unreported and unnoticed, while coronavirus restrictions are rendering the courts inaccessible to both the general public and the press. Finally, 84-year-old resident of Feltham, West London, has been forced to eat food scraps from her bin in order to survive after first accidentally locking herself in her home, and then because some utter scumbag has been stealing her food deliveries from her doorstep. The woman, named only as Elizabeth, has no friends or family nearby and has been forced to manage alone during lockdown, so started ordering food online. Police were called to Elizabeth's aid following reports she had been imprisoned in her own home and was unable to collect her only supply of food. I have to say at this point that if someone knew this was going on, why had she not been helped sooner? If it was me, I would have made contact with the lady through her letterbox if necessary and arranged to have her freed, even if that meant breaking a window and replacing it for her, in order to know that she had been imprisoned, which indicates more than just being locked in, and knowing that the food had been stolen. The person making the report must have had some prior knowledge of it happening. After all, if Elizabeth was locked in, it's unlikely that she would have known the food stuff on her doorstep was being stolen, in my opinion. On arrival, 2 constables saw that the 84-year-old's fridge had literally no food in it and heard that she had resorted to eating out of the rubbish bin to survive. The pair is said to have immediately gone to the local shops to buy food, drinks, toiletries and other key items to make her feel more comfortable. A Facebook post by the Met said that this is a remarkable example of what lengths our officers will go to protect local residents during this very challenging time. And although I'm incredibly glad Elizabeth was helped out, it's hardly extreme lengths that these constables went to. And I do hate it when the police try to make out that an act of kindness is above and beyond what they would normally do, when in fact it's exactly what these should be doing. I really don't want to turn an overall happy ending into a rant, but let's face it, are we ever going to see a Facebook post from the police force saying, "This is a disgusting example of what lengths our officers will go to abuse local residents during this very challenging time"? I think not. A huge thank you to Patreon supporters Motty Lad, Holly, AD Dave, Ian W, Copwatch UK, Dean J, Carl, President Trump, Danielle and Marty Lad, whose support is helping me to continue providing you this daily content. Especially today, as I mentioned a paedophile earlier. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.